"I'm just your cleaner," she said to the flirtatious billionaire. "Before we begin, hit your city in the comments. Don't ghost at the end. Say how it made you feel and rate the story 0 to 10. No holding back. Here we go." The crystal glass hit the marble floor and exploded into 1,000 glittering pieces, each shard catching the afternoon light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse suite. Riley Hartman was instructed to the CEO's room immediately with her cleaning cartwheel silent on the plush carpet as she crossed the threshold she'd been told never to cross during occupied hours. "I've got it," she said, her voice steady even as her pulse kicked up. The blonde woman half-naked stepped back, her hand still suspended in the air where it had been reaching for the billionaire's face, her lipstick perfect, her intention clear before he'd turned his head and her elbow caught the glass. Damon Ashby stood near the bathroom door, phone pressed to his ear, steam still clinging to his shoulders. He wore a towel slung low on his hips and nothing else, and Riley kept her eyes on the glass, on the dangerous scatter of it across the white marble, on anything except the ink that crawled up his ribs and disappeared under the towel's edge. "You need to leave," he said into the phone, his voice flat. Not to Riley. To whoever was on the other end. "No, I'm done with this conversation." The blonde was staring at Riley now, her expression caught between embarrassment and irritation. "Be fast." "I'm on it," Riley said, still kneeling, already reaching for the larger pieces. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, gathering the shards into a pile, her fingers careful but quick. She didn't look up. Didn't need to. She could feel both of them watching her, could feel the tension in the room like humidity before a storm. Riley kept working. A smaller piece bit into her palm, sharp and sudden, and she pulled her hand back without thinking, blood welling bright against her skin. She pressed her thumb over it, applied pressure, and reached for the dustpan with her other hand. "You're bleeding." His voice was closer now. She glanced up despite herself and found him standing 3 feet away, towel still dangerously low, phone gone, his attention entirely on her hand. "It's fine," she said. "Happens." He crouched down, and suddenly he was at her level, his eyes gray and direct, his face too handsome in a way that felt almost aggressive, like he knew exactly what he looked like and didn't apologize for it. The tattoos were clearer now, intricate lines that wrapped around his shoulder and down his arm, some kind of geometric pattern that cost a fortune. "I've got it under control," Riley said, keeping her voice even, professional. She finished gathering the glass, stood, felt the cut on her palm pulse in time with her heartbeat. "The suite will be fully cleaned within the hour if you'd like to step out." "What's your name?" She paused, dustpan in hand, blood seeping through the gap between her thumb and palm. "Riley. Riley." He said it slowly, like he was tasting it. "You always this calm when you're bleeding?" She didn't say anything. The corner of his mouth moved. Not quite a smile. Something sharper. He straightened. She was aware suddenly of how much taller he was, how the light from the windows made his still damp skin look gold, how the room smelled like expensive cologne and steam and something else, something clean and male and distracting. "I should finish up," she said, moving past him toward her cart, toward the safety of routine and distance and not looking at him anymore. "Riley." She stopped. Didn't turn around. "Thank you," he said. Her throat felt tight. "It's my job." She heard him move, heard the bathroom door close, only then did she let herself breathe out, let herself look at her hand, at the blood that was already drying at the edges, at the cut that was shallow but would sting for days. When she left, the suite was spotless. When she got back to the service elevator, Joan was waiting, her waitress uniform crisp, her expression curious. "Was that the Ashby suite?" Joan asked, falling into step beside her. And I cleaned up some broken glass." Joan's laugh was bright and disbelieving. "You were in there for like 20 minutes. Damon Ashby's back in town for his development launch. Have you seen his Forbes headline? Single and wealthy billionaire under 30, everyone's talking about it." "Did you see him?" Riley pressed the elevator button, kept her eyes on the descending numbers. Briefly. Joan shook her head, grinning. "You're impossible. Do you know how many girls would kill to be briefly in a room with him?" "Then they can have the broken glass next time," Riley said, but her tone was light, almost teasing, and Joan bumped her shoulder. "You're coming to the launch event, right? Saturday night. The hotel's hosting it, top floor, supposedly half of Brooklyn's elite will be there. I'm working the floor, you should come. Use this to your advantage. All that talk about your event planning business. This is the kind of thing you need to see firsthand." The elevator doors opened. Riley stepped inside, Joan following. "I'm not invited to things like that." So crash it. I'll get you in. Joan. I'm serious. You spend all your time cleaning up after these people, you should see what they're actually like. Their names, styles, or patterns that might help you in your future business when they're celebrating. It's educational. Riley looked at her friend, at the excitement in her eyes, at the way Joan always seemed to lean toward the light, toward the possibility of something more. They'd grown up together in the same orphanage, had shared the same donated clothes and the same small dreams. Somewhere along the way Joan had started looking at the luxury around them with hunger instead of indifference. I'll think about it, Riley said, knowing she wouldn't, knowing that people like Damon Ashby existed in a different atmosphere entirely, one she had no intention of breathing. The evening shift settled over the hotel like a second skin, familiar and demanding. Riley moved through the 14th floor corridor with her cart, checking rooms, replacing towels, erasing any evidence that people had lived in these spaces for a few hours or days. Her hand still stung where the glass had cut her, a thin line across her palm that she'd covered with a bandage from the first aid kit in the service closet. She was restocking minibar items in room 1407 when her phone buzzed. Joan's message lit up the screen, *floor 16, VIP reception area. Come up when you're done, *. Riley frowned. The 16th floor was where the hotel hosted private events, where people paid thousands of dollars for champagne and small plates and the illusion of exclusivity. She wasn't scheduled to work up there tonight. She finished with the minibar, locked the room, and took the service elevator up. The doors opened to muted conversations and soft jazz. Joan was standing near the service entrance, balancing a tray of empty glasses, her face flushed with the kind of excitement that made Riley immediately wary. What's going on? Riley asked, keeping her voice low. He's here, Joan whispered, nodding toward the reception area. Ashby. He's doing some kind of pre-launch thing with investors. I've been watching him all night, Riley. He's even better looking in a suit than in whatever he was wearing earlier. He was wearing a towel. Joan's eyes went wide. You saw him in a towel and you're telling me this now? I was busy bleeding. You're impossible. Joan moved the tray, glanced back toward the event space. I know you don't care about this stuff. Seriously, some of these people could be useful contacts when you finally get your business going. At least observe, see how they network, how they move through a room. Riley was about to respond when a man's voice cut through the ambient noise, sharp and entitled. Excuse me, Cupcake. She turned. A man in his 50s, expensive suit, expensive watch, expensive everything, was looking at her with the kind of smile that made her skin crawl. He had a glass of scotch in one hand, a posture of someone who'd never been told no in his life. I think you dropped something, he said, his eyes moving over her in a way that had nothing to do with dropped objects. I don't think I did, Riley said, her voice level. You sure? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you dropped your standards working in a place like this. He laughed at his own joke, took a step closer. Pretty girl like you, cleaning up after people. Seems like a waste. Joan had gone still beside her, uncertain. Riley felt her jaw tighten, felt that familiar anger rise up, the kind that came from years of being invisible until someone decided you were visible for all the wrong reasons. I'm just doing my job, she said. If you'll excuse me. Don't be like that. I'm just being friendly. Maybe I could be very friendly, if you're interested in. She's not. The voice came from behind the older man. Riley's stomach dropped before she even saw him. Damon Ashby stepped into view, his suit dark and perfectly tailored, his expression unreadable but his presence somehow filling all the available space between them. The older man turned, his smile faltering. Ashby. I was just leaving, Damon said. Weren't you, Benson? Benson's face went red, then pale, then he was moving away, disappearing into the crowd with his scotch and his wounded pride. Joan was staring openly now, her tray forgotten in her hands. Damon looked at Riley, really looked at her. She felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with unwanted attention, everything to do with the way his eyes seemed to catalog everything, her uniform, her posture, the bandage on her palm. We need to talk, he said. Privately. I'm working, Sir Ashby, Riley said. I'm asking. Joan was nudging her, not subtly. Riley glanced at her friend, saw the encouragement there, the excitement, the vicarious thrill of watching someone else get noticed by someone like him. Riley said. She followed him through a side door into a smaller room, some kind of sitting area with leather chairs and low lighting, far enough from the reception that the music became background texture instead of presence. He closed the door behind them. Suddenly the space felt much smaller than it was. You didn't have to do that, Riley said, crossing her arms. I had it handled. I know you did. I watched you handle it before I stepped in. He leaned against the door, hands in his pockets, completely at ease in a way that felt practiced. Benson Castellano is an investor in 3 of my projects. I've been looking for a reason to put him in his place for 6 months. Thank you. For being harassed? For giving me an opening. His mouth curved, not quite apologetic. That came out wrong. You think? He just watched her for some moments, didn't speak. She felt it like a weight on her chest, the kind that makes your pulse quicken without warning. Her fingers itched to move. He held them still, every muscle taut. When he leaned slightly closer, his hand brushing just near hers, she instinctively stepped back, heart thudding in a rhythm she didn't recognize. His smirk was deliberate, slow, like he knew exactly what he was doing. There was a warmth in his gaze that made her skin prickle, and an unspoken restraint that made her want to test it. How's your hand? His voice was low, casual, but charged, as if he could sense every thought she was trying to hide. She glanced at the bandage, surprised he remembered. Fine. I've had worse. I'm sure you have. His eyes lingered. It felt like he was tracing every line of her face without moving a finger. He pushed off from the door, took a step closer. I have a development launch Saturday night. Top floor of this building, actually. Black tie, investors, press, the whole circus. Congratulations, I want you to come. The words hung between them, impossible and absurd. Riley laughed, sharp and disbelieving. Mr. Damon, are you serious? Completely. I'm just your cleaner. I know what you are. His voice was quieter now, more direct. I'm asking it, why? Because you're the first person I've met in months who didn't look at me like I was a bank account with a face. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a card, held it out. Because I think you'd survive a night in my world without losing yourself in it. Most people can't. You don't have to be by my side. Riley stared at the card, didn't take it. You don't know anything about me. Then come Saturday and prove me wrong. This is insane, probably. He set the card on the arm of the nearest chair. The offer stands. There'll be a dress waiting for you at the front desk Saturday afternoon if you change your mind. And shoes. I'm guessing size 7? Her face went hot. You're guessing my shoe size? I'm observant. He moved toward the door, paused with his hand on the handle. I should get back before Benson thinks I'm plotting against him, which I am, but subtly. He left before she could respond, before she could tell him exactly how inappropriate this was, how impossible, how completely out of the question. She stood there in the empty room, staring at the card on the chair, her pulse loud in her ears and her thoughts a tangled mess of indignation and something else, something dangerous. Riley didn't touch the card. She left it sitting on the leather chair and walked out of that room like it had never happened, like Damon Ashby and his impossible invitation existed in some alternate dimension she'd already decided to ignore. She found Joan near the service elevator, practically vibrating with curiosity. What did he say? What did he want? Riley, you were in there for 5 minutes, which in billionaire time is basically a marriage proposal. He asked me to his launch event. Joan's mouth fell open. He what? It's not happening. Riley pressed the elevator button, kept her eyes on the doors. He's bored, I'm convenient, I'm not interested in being anyone's entertainment. Entertainment? Riley, do you understand what kind of opportunity this is? Not just for romance or whatever, but for networking. You'd be in a room with people who throw events that cost more than we make in a year. You could learn, you could make connections. The elevator arrived. Riley stepped inside. I'd be a cleaner at a party full of people who don't see cleaners as people. No thanks. Joan followed her in, jabbing the button for their floor with more force than necessary. You're scared. I'm realistic. You're terrified of what might happen if you actually let yourself want something. Joan's voice had an edge now, frustration bleeding through. You've been talking about starting your event planning business for 2 years, Riley. 2 years. Every time an opportunity shows up, you find a reason to say no. This isn't an opportunity, it's a rich guy playing games. Maybe. Or maybe it's both. The elevator doors opened. Joan stepped out first, then turned back. I'm not saying fall in love with him or whatever. I'm saying show up, observe, learn something. Use him the way people like him use people like us every single day. What's the worst that could happen? Riley walked past her, heading for the service closet where they stored their personal items. I could forget who I am. Or you could remember who you want to be. The words stuck with Riley through the rest of her shift, through the subway ride home to her studio apartment in a neighborhood where the Brooklyn luxury ended and real life began, through the shower where she stood under lukewarm water and stared at the bandage on her palm until it started to peel at the edges. She lay in bed that night, ceiling fan turning lazy circles overhead, and thought about the orphanage. About being 10 years old and watching couples walk through, their eyes sliding past her and Joan and all the other kids who were too old, too quiet, too something to be chosen. About learning early that wanting things openly was dangerous, that hope was a luxury she couldn't afford. She'd built her life on certainty, on things she could control. Cleaning was simple. You made something dirty into something clean. There were rules, procedures, visible results. No ambiguity. No risk of misreading signals or investing in maybes that turned into nothing. People like Damon Ashby lived in a world of maybes, of possibilities that existed only because they had the money and power to make them real. She didn't belong there, and pretending otherwise, even for one night, felt like betraying every careful boundary she'd constructed. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Joan's name lit up the screen. Still thinking about it, Riley typed back. Number 3 dots appeared immediately. Liar. Riley smiled despite herself, set the phone down, and closed her eyes. But sleep was slow to come, and when it did, she dreamed of broken glass and gray eyes and a voice asking her name like it mattered. The next 3 days passed in their usual rhythm. Riley cleaned rooms, restocked supplies, nodded politely at guests who didn't see her and guests who saw her too much. She avoided the 16th floor and told herself it was coincidence, not avoidance. Joan brought up the launch event twice more, then seemed to sense Riley's genuine discomfort and backed off, though her disappointment was obvious. Thursday afternoon, Riley was finishing up a suite on the 12th floor when her supervisor, Mark, appeared in the doorway. He was a thin man in his 40s who ran the housekeeping department with military efficiency and unexpected kindness. Riley, front desk has a package for you. She looked up from the bed she was making, confused. A package? That's what they said. You can grab it on your way out. He left before she could ask questions. Riley finished the room on autopilot, her mind circling around possibilities, none of them making sense. She didn't order things to the hotel. Nobody sent her packages. When her shift ended, she approached the front desk with caution. The woman working, Angela, smiled when she saw her. There you are. This came for you this morning. She lifted a large black box from under the counter, the kind of box that looked expensive even closed. Someone's got an admirer. Riley took the box like it might explode. It was lighter than she expected. Who dropped it off? Courier service. Very professional. Angela's smile turned knowing. There's a card. Riley carried the box to the staff lounge, set it on the table, and stared at it for a full minute before opening it. Inside, wrapped in perfectly and professionally, was a dress. Not just a dress. The kind of dress that belonged on red carpets, midnight blue silk that caught the fluorescent lights and turned them into something softer. Shoes nestled beside it, simple heels in black, and yes, size 7. The card was small, cream-colored, his handwriting angular and sure. Asterisk in case you change your mind. Saturday, 8 p.m. No pressure. No pressure. Riley laughed, sharp and disbelieving, alone in the empty lounge with a dress worth more than her monthly rent and an invitation she'd already refused sitting in her hands like a dare. She should return it. Should march up to whatever room he was staying in and hand it back with a polite but firm refusal. Should make it clear that this, whatever this was, wasn't happening. Instead, she folded the tissue paper back over the dress, closed the box, and carried it home on the subway, holding it carefully on her lap like something fragile, something that might break if she wasn't careful, though whether the thing breaking would be the dress or her resolve, she didn't let herself consider. Friday morning, Riley woke up to 17 messages from Joan. Most of them were variations of "Did he send you a dress? I saw the box and Riley answer your phone." She called her back before her first cup of coffee, knowing Joan wouldn't let this go. "You're going," Joan said immediately, no hello, no preamble. "I haven't decided. The fact that you haven't already returned it means you're going." Joan's voice was bright with certainty. "Riley, this is huge. Do you know how many women would kill for this opportunity you've mentioned?" Riley walked to her tiny kitchen, started the coffee maker. "It feels wrong." "Why?" "Because I'm not one of them. I'd be pretending to be something I'm not." "You'd be observing a high-end event with the goal of learning how they're run." "That's not pretending, that's research. Besides, you deserve one night where you're not cleaning up after people, where you get to exist in those spaces as a guest instead of staff." Riley leaned against the counter, watching coffee drip into the pot. The dress was still in its box on her bed, untouched since she'd brought it home. She hadn't even tried it on, afraid of what it might feel like to wear something that beautiful, something that expensive, something that represented a world she'd spent her whole life on the outside of. What if I hate it? She asked quietly. Then you leave early and you never have to do it again. Joan paused. What if you don't? What if you actually learn something useful? What if this is the push you need to finally start making your business real instead of just a someday dream? Riley closed her eyes. You really think I should go? I think you should stop being so scared of taking up space. Joan's voice softened. You've spent your whole life making yourself small, invisible. Maybe it's time to be seen. After they hung up, Riley stood in her apartment for a long time, coffee cooling in her cup, morning light creeping across the floor. She thought about the orphanage again, about learning to take up as little room as possible, about the quiet mathematics of survival that said wanting too much led to disappointment and disappointment led to pain. Joan was right about one thing. She'd been talking about her event planning business for 2 years, sketching ideas in notebooks she kept hidden under her bed, researching venues and vendors and permits on her phone during breaks, building a dream in private where it was safe, where it couldn't be judged or dismissed or crushed by reality. Maybe one night wouldn't hurt. Maybe she could go, observe, learn, and leave before anything got complicated. Keep it professional. Keep it controlled. She tried on the dress after her shift that evening, standing in front of the narrow mirror by her bathroom. The silk moved like water, clinging and flowing in ways that made her look like someone else entirely, someone confident and elegant and belonging. The shoes fit perfectly. She stared at her reflection and barely recognized herself. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. Riley? His voice, unmistakable even through the slight distortion of the phone line. How did you get my number? You work for me, remember? She could hear the smile in his voice. Did you get the dress? I did. And it's too much. That's not what I asked. A pause. Are you coming tomorrow? She should say no. Should end this before it began, before she got pulled into something she couldn't control. The dress was still on her body and her reflection was still in the mirror. Joan's words were still in her head. I'll come, she heard herself say. For an hour. Maybe 2. I'll take it. His voice changed, became more serious. Riley, I meant what I said about no pressure. If you show up and it's terrible, you can leave. I won't make it weird. You already made it weird by the way you did at the hotel. He laughed, genuine and surprised. Fair. I'll see you tomorrow night. He hung up before she could second-guess herself. Riley stood in her empty apartment wearing a dress that cost more than she made in 6 months and wondered what she'd just agreed to. Saturday arrived relentless and inevitable. Riley worked a half shift, cleaning the same floors she cleaned every week, trying not to think about the evening ahead. She saw Damon once, from a distance, walking through the lobby with a phone pressed to his ear and 3 people trailing him with tablets and briefcases. He didn't see her. She was relieved and disappointed in equal measure. Joan found her during her break. So I've been thinking about tonight. Of course you have. You need a strategy. Go in, find a spot near the back where you can observe. Watch how they interact, how the event flows. Take mental notes. If Ashby approaches you, be polite but professional. Don't let him think this is about him. It's not about him. I know. He doesn't know that. Joan grabbed her hands. You're going to be amazing. And Riley? Try to have a little fun. You're allowed to enjoy things. Riley squeezed her friend's hands back, grateful and terrified. What if I don't fit in? Then you'll be in good company, because half the people there are probably faking it too. Rich people are just better at pretending they belong everywhere. At 7:30, Riley stood in her apartment, fully dressed, makeup applied with a shaking hand, hair pulled into a simple style that felt elegant without trying too hard. She barely recognized herself. The woman in the mirror looked capable, composed, like someone who attended events like this regularly. She grabbed her small purse, checked that she had her ID and phone and subway card for the escape she was already planning, and headed out before she could change her mind. The subway ride back to the hotel felt surreal, people glancing at her with curiosity, this woman in a designer dress sitting among commuters and tourists. She kept her eyes on her phone, breathing slowly, reminding herself this was research, this was practical, this was one night and then she could go back to her regular life. The hotel lobby was transformed. Riley had seen it 1,000 times in its everyday state, impressive but functional, a space designed to move people efficiently from entrance to elevator. Night it looked like something from a film, all soft lighting and floral arrangements the size of small trees, staff in formal uniforms directing guests toward the bank of elevators that led to the top floor. She walked through like she belonged there, her heels clicking on marble she'd mopped just yesterday morning. Nobody stopped her. Nobody questioned her presence. The invisibility she'd relied on her entire working life had reversed itself, and now the expensive dress made her visible in exactly the way that mattered to people like this. The elevator ride up felt endless. 2 other couples joined her, both older, both dripping with jewelry and confidence. They talked around her about market trends and vacation homes, their conversation a language she understood academically but had never spoken. She kept her face neutral, her posture straight, and counted floors. The doors opened onto a space she'd only ever seen during setup, empty and waiting to be filled. Now it was alive, floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing Brooklyn's skyline at dusk, the waterfront glittering below, live music pouring from a small stage where a jazz quartet played something smooth and expensive. Waiters moved through the crowd with trays of champagne and small plates of food that looked like art. There had to be 200 people here, maybe more, all of them dressed like they did this every weekend. Riley took a glass of champagne from a passing waiter purely to have something to hold, somewhere to put her hands that didn't feel awkward. She moved toward the windows, finding a spot near the edge of the room where she could observe without being in the center of everything. The view was incredible. She'd never seen the city from this angle, had never stood in this room when it wasn't empty or being cleaned. The waterfront stretched out below, lights beginning to glow as evening settled in, and for a moment she let herself feel something close to wonder. "You came." She turned. Damon was there, appearing beside her like he'd been waiting for exactly this moment. He wore a tuxedo that probably cost more than her entire year's salary, his dark hair styled back, those gray eyes focused entirely on her in a way that made the room feel suddenly smaller. "I said I would, all thanks to you, Mr. Damon," Riley replied, keeping her voice level. "You did. I wasn't sure you meant it." He glanced at her dress, then back to her face. "You look incredible." "It's the dress. It's not the dress." His voice was quiet, certain. "Though I'm glad it fits." An older woman approached them, her smile wide and assessing. "Damon, darling, you must introduce me to your lovely companion." Riley felt Damon's hand touch the small of her back, light and brief. "Riley Hartman, this is Catherine Moreau. She owns half the art galleries in Brooklyn." Catherine extended a hand, her grip firm. "Hartman. I don't think I know that family." "What do you do, dear?" The question landed like a test. Riley met the woman's eyes and made a choice. "I'm starting an event planning business." "How wonderful. There's always room for fresh talent in this city." Catherine's attention was already sliding away, towards someone more important across the room. "Lovely to meet you both." She disappeared into the crowd. Damon's mouth curved. "Event planning? It's true. Or it will be." Riley took a sip of champagne, felt the bubbles sharp on her tongue. "I wasn't going to tell her I clean hotel rooms. I wouldn't have cared if you did." Easy to say when you've never had to care what anyone thinks of your job. His expression changed, something harder moving through it. "You'd be surprised." Before she could ask what he meant, another person approached, then another, a steady stream of introductions and small talk that Damon navigated effortlessly while Riley stood beside him, nodding and smiling and saying as little as possible. She watched how he moved through conversations, how he listened more than he spoke, how he could make someone feel important with just his attention. After the 5th introduction, he leaned close to her ear. "Want to escape for a minute?" She did. Desperately. The crowd was getting to her, the constant performance of belonging wearing thin. She nodded, and he guided her through the room, past clusters of conversations, toward a door she hadn't noticed before. They stepped out onto a terrace, smaller than the main event space but no less beautiful, with scattered seating and plants in large ceramic pots. The music from inside was muted here, the city sounds rising to replace it. Only a few other people occupied the space, far enough away to offer privacy. Riley breathed out, feeling tension release from her shoulders. "Thank you. It gets overwhelming." Damon leaned against the railing, loosening his bow tie slightly. "All those people want something from you, even if they don't say it directly. What do they want from you?" "Money, mostly. Access. Association." He glanced at her. "What do you want?" The question felt dangerous. Riley looked out at the skyline instead of at him. "To learn how events like this work. To understand what makes them successful." That's the professional answer. What's the real one? She was quiet for a moment, considering whether to be honest. The champagne had made her braver than usual, or maybe it was the dress, or maybe it was just exhaustion from pretending. I want to prove I can exist in spaces like this without losing who I am. Why would you lose who you are? Because everything here is about performance, about being the right version of yourself for the right audience. I've spent my whole life trying not to perform, trying to just be real and solid and certain. Damon was watching her closely now, his attention complete. You think I'm performing? I think everyone here is performing, including me, right now, in this borrowed dress. It's not borrowed. It's yours. Which makes it worse, somehow. She met his eyes. Why did you really invite me here? He didn't answer immediately. A helicopter passed overhead, its lights blinking against the darkening sky. Because when you were cleaning up that glass, he said finally, you didn't look at me once. Not with interest, not with judgment, not with anything. You just did your job and left. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. Riley's chest tightened. She wanted to tell him that of course she'd looked, that she'd noticed everything about him even while pretending not to, admitting that felt like giving something away she couldn't afford to lose. This is about ego, she said instead. The girl who didn't fall at your feet. Maybe at first. He turned toward her fully, leaning one hip against the railing. Then Benson harassed you and handled it with more grace than I've ever managed when someone disrespects me. You refused my invitation like it was nothing, like turning down opportunities that other people would scheme for was just another Tuesday. No, this isn't about ego anymore. What's it about then? I don't know yet. His honesty surprised her. I'm trying to figure that out. The terrace door opened and a couple stepped out, their conversation loud and bright. The moment between Riley and Damon fractured, became something more public, less honest. He straightened, smoothed his bow tie back into place. I should get back, he said. Beach in 10 minutes. Stay, please. At least through dinner. I wasn't planning to stay for dinner. I know. I'm asking it. He paused. After, if you want, I could show you how we planned this event. Logistics, flow, vendor coordination, professional consultation. She studied his face, looking for the angle, the manipulation. Found only what looked like genuine interest. Why would you do that? Because you asked intelligent questions earlier, because I think you'd actually use the information instead of just collecting it as gossip. He glanced toward the door. Because I'm curious what you'd do differently if this were your event. Before she could respond, he was moving back inside, pulled into the current of the party, immediately surrounded by people who wanted his attention. Riley stood alone on the terrace, the city spreading out below her, wondered what she was doing here, what game they were playing, whether it was possible to learn from someone without getting tangled up in them. She went back inside, found Joan working, carrying a tray of champagne flutes, her face lighting up when she saw Riley. You look amazing, Joan whispered as she passed. He hasn't stopped watching you all night. You're imagining things. I'm working this event, I see everything, trust me. Joan moved away before Riley could argue, leaving her standing near a pillar, trying to be invisible again and failing completely. A woman approached, younger than most of the guests, maybe early 30s, her dress white and fitted and clearly expensive. She had the kind of beauty that looked effortless but required considerable effort, her blonde hair perfect, her makeup flawless. You're the one Damon's been parading around, she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. Riley kept her expression neutral. I wouldn't call it parading, wouldn't you? The woman sipped her champagne. I'm Vanessa Hartwick. My family has invested in 3 of his developments. We go back years. The territorial marking was obvious. Riley should have felt intimidated, should have backed down. Something in Vanessa's tone activated a stubbornness she'd been suppressing all night. That must be nice, Riley said pleasantly. Having that kind of history. It is. Vanessa's eyes traveled over Riley's dress, assessing. Where did you say you were from? I didn't. Well, word of advice, from someone who knows how these things work. Men like Damon collect interesting people the way some people collect art. Beautiful, unusual, something to show off at parties. They don't keep them. The words were designed to wound. They did, landing precisely where Riley's doubts already lived. She'd spent years dealing with people who thought they were better than her. She knew how to hold her ground. Good thing I'm not interested in being kept, Riley said. If you'll excuse me. She walked away before Vanessa could respond, her pulse loud in her ears, her hands shaking slightly. She found the bathroom, locked herself in a stall, and breathed slowly until the shaking stopped. This was a mistake. She didn't belong here. Pretending she did was only setting herself up for exactly the kind of humiliation Vanessa had implied. She should leave now, before dinner, before whatever came next, before she got any more tangled up in Damon's world and whatever his intentions actually were. When she emerged from the bathroom, Joan was waiting in the hallway. "I saw Vanessa talking to you," Joan said. "She's a nightmare. Ignore everything she said." "How do you know what she said?" "Because I've watched her do it to every woman Damon talks to for more than 5 minutes. She thinks she has some kind of claim on him." Joan grabbed Riley's hands. "Don't let her chase you off. You have every right to be here." "Do I though?" "I'm wearing a dress he bought, Joan. I'm playing pretend in a world where I don't know the rules. So learn the rules. That's why you came, remember?" Joan squeezed her hands. "Besides, dinner's about to start. You said you'd observe how the event flows. You can't do that from your apartment." Riley let Joan talk her back into the main room, where staff were directing guests toward tables arranged around the space. She found her name on a place card at a table near the front, surrounded by people she didn't know. Damon was at the head table, visible but separate, already deep in conversation with the people around him. The meal was elaborate, course after course of food that looked almost too beautiful to eat. Riley sat between a venture capitalist and a real estate developer's wife, both of whom made polite conversation that revealed nothing while gathering everything. She answered questions carefully, kept her story consistent, and watched everything. Watched how the waitstaff moved through the room with practiced efficiency. Watched how the lighting moved subtly between courses. Watched how the music volume adjusted to accommodate conversation. Watched Damon stand to give his speech about the development project, his voice confident and compelling, talking about future-proof developments and responsible growth with a confidence that made even the cynical investors lean forward. He was good at this. At making people believe in things, at selling visions of futures that didn't exist yet. She wondered if that's what he was doing with her too, selling her a vision of herself that wasn't real, that couldn't last beyond this single night. The speech ended to enthusiastic applause. Damon returned to his seat, but his eyes found Riley across the room, holding her gaze for just a moment before someone pulled his attention away. That brief connection made her stomach twist with something she refused to name. Dessert arrived, a complicated construction of chocolate and gold leaf that probably cost hundreds of dollars a plate. Riley ate slowly, listening to the conversations around her, learning the rhythm of how these people talked, the coded language they used to discuss money without ever mentioning actual numbers. "So Riley," the venture capitalist beside her said, "Damon mentioned you're in event planning." "What kind of events?" She set down her fork, met his eyes. "I'm in the early stages. Building a client base, focusing on smaller corporate events and private parties right now." It wasn't exactly a lie. It was a future truth, one she was speaking into existence. "If you're any good, give me your card. My firm does quarterly mixers that could use some fresh perspective." She didn't have cards, didn't have a website or a business license or any of the infrastructure that made a business real. She smiled and said, "I'll make sure to get you one," and watched him nod, already moving on to the next topic. When dinner finally ended, people began moving toward the bar, toward the windows, forming new clusters of conversation. Riley stood, intending to slip away before anyone could pull her into more small talk, but Damon appeared beside her before she could take 3 steps. "Walk with me," he said, not quite a question. They moved toward the far end of the room, past the stage where the jazz quartet had been replaced by a DJ playing something low and ambient. He guided her through a door marked staff only, and suddenly they were in a service corridor, all white walls and industrial lighting, the glamour of the event stripped away. "This is where the magic actually happens," Damon said, walking down the corridor. "Everyone sees the finished product, but most people have no idea how much coordination goes into making an event like this look effortless." Riley followed, her heels loud on the concrete floor. "I figured you should see what we actually did first." He stopped at a door, pushed it open. Inside was what looked like a command center, laptops and tablets and staff members with headsets coordinating everything from music timing to service flow. A woman in her 40s looked up, surprised. "Mr. Ashby, is everything okay?" "Perfect, Monica. This is Riley Hartman. She's studying event management. Mind if she observes for a few minutes?" Monica's expression changed from surprise to professional welcome. "Of course. We're just wrapping up the dinner service transition. Riley, feel free to ask questions." For the next 20 minutes, Riley forgot about the dress, forgot about Vanessa's warnings, forgot about everything except the intricate machinery of making an event work. Monica walked her through the timeline, the vendor coordination, the contingency plans they'd built for everything from equipment failure to last-minute guest list changes. The key, Monica explained, is anticipating problems before they become visible to guests. By the time someone notices something's wrong, you've already failed. Riley absorbed it all, asked questions about staffing ratios and timing buffers and how they chose which details to prioritize. Monica answered everything with the patience of someone who genuinely loved her work. Riley felt that familiar hunger rising, the wanting she'd been suppressing for years, the need to build something of her own that mattered. When they finally left the command center, Damon was quiet, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "What?" Riley asked. "You came alive in there." "I could see it." She smiled and voiced a quiet, "Thank you." They walked back toward the main event. Before they reached the door, he stopped. "Riley, I need to tell you something." The seriousness in his voice made her nervous. He ran a hand through his hair, disturbing its perfect styling. "Look, I'm not good at this. At being genuine with people. My whole life is performance, just like you said earlier. Something about you makes me want to try being real for once. I have no idea how to do that without screwing it up." The vulnerability in his voice caught her off guard. She'd been so focused on protecting herself from him that she hadn't considered he might need protection too. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "Because you are different from them. Everyone else in my life wants money or access or association. You just want to be left alone to build your own thing. That's either incredibly refreshing or incredibly terrifying. I'm still figuring out which." Riley leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted from the weight of the evening, from the constant vigilance of existing in a space that wasn't designed for her. "Mr. Damon, I can't be your escape from your regular life. I have enough to deal with without becoming someone's rebellion against their own choices. That's not what this is, and Damon is fine. We are alone." "Isn't it?" Rich guy, bored with his usual crowd, finds the help fascinating because she's different and therefore temporarily interesting? His jaw tightened. "You really think that's all this is?" "I think I don't know what this is. That scares me more than anything else tonight." She straightened, smoothed her dress. "Thank you for showing me the operations side. That was genuinely useful. I should go." "Stay," he said simply, stripped of his usual flirtation and any expectation. "Not for me. For you. There's a band starting in 20 minutes, and the networking isn't done. You could meet more people who might actually hire you when you launch your business." She wanted to leave. Wanted to return to her apartment and her regular life where things made sense. He was right about the networking. She'd come this far, and Joan would never forgive her if she left before extracting every possible professional benefit. "Fine," she said. They returned to the event together. Immediately people gravitated toward Damon, pulling him into conversations, asking questions about the development. Riley moved away, found herself talking to a woman who ran a boutique marketing firm, then a man who organized event galas, then someone else whose business card promised corporate event solutions. She collected 3 legitimate contacts in 40 minutes, people who seemed genuinely interested when she talked about her plans, who asked for her information with the kind of focus that suggested they might actually follow up. Joan caught her eye from across the room and gave her an enthusiastic thumbs up. The band started playing, something with a slow, building rhythm that pulled couples onto the small dance floor. Riley stayed near the edges, watching, taking mental notes about how the energy of the room changed with the music, how the lighting dimmed further to create intimacy. "Dance with me." She turned. Damon stood there, hand extended, his expression somewhere between hopeful and resigned to rejection. "I don't dance," Riley said. "Neither do I, really. It's expected. I'd rather do something I'm bad at with you than something I'm good at with anyone else." The honesty of it disarmed her. She looked at his hand, at the people watching them with varying degrees of interest, at Joan who was practically vibrating with excitement near the bar. "One dance," Riley said. "Then I'm leaving." His hand closed around hers, warm and sure, and he led her to the floor. The band was playing something old, something that sounded like it belonged in a different era when romance was simpler and people said what they meant. Damon's other hand found the small of her back. Suddenly they were moving, swaying more than dancing, close enough that she could smell his cologne mixed with something else, something that was just him. "You're tense," he said quietly. "There are about 50 people watching us right now. Let them watch." His voice was low, meant only for her. "You've spent all night worrying about what people think. Maybe just exist for 3 minutes." She wanted to argue, wanted to maintain her walls. His hand was steady on her back and music was making her defenses feel thinner than usual. She let herself relax slightly, let herself be present in the moment instead of 3 steps ahead planning her escape. I meant what I said earlier, Damon continued. About wanting to be real with you. I know that sounds insane coming from someone you've known for less than a week. I haven't had a genuine conversation with anyone in months, maybe years. Everyone wants something, everyone's performing. I'm so tired of it. Riley looked up at him. His face was closer than she'd realized, his eyes holding hers with an intensity that made breathing difficult. I want something too, she admitted. I want to learn from you. I want access to the world you move in, so I can build something of my own. The words seemed to surprise even her. I like the sound of that, he said, a smile tugging at his mouth. His thumb moved slightly against her back, a small gesture that shouldn't have felt as significant as it did. I'm offering willingly. That's not using, that's collaboration. The song was ending. Riley knew she should step back, should thank him politely and leave like she'd promised herself. Instead, she stayed exactly where she was, held in place by something she didn't want to examine too closely. I'm going now, she said, but didn't move. He didn't release her. Mr. Damon, sorry Damon. Riley. This is a bad idea. Probably. His voice dropped lower. Stay. She pulled back then, creating space between them, breaking whatever spell the music and proximity had woven. I can't. I'm already in too deep, and I've been here less than 3 hours. If I stay longer, I'll start believing I belong here, and that's dangerous. She walked away before he could respond, before she could change her mind, before the wanting became too loud to ignore. Found Joan near the coat check, hugged her quickly, promised to call tomorrow, and left the event with her heart racing and her thoughts a mess of confusion and something that felt dangerously close to hope. The subway ride home felt like returning from another planet. Riley sat in her designer dress among people in regular clothes living regular lives and wondered what she'd just done, what door she'd opened, whether she'd be able to close it again if she needed to. Her phone buzzed as she climbed the stairs to her apartment. A text from an unknown number, *thank you for coming. And for dancing. And for being honest. Sleep well. She didn't respond. Didn't know what to say. Just changed out of the dress, hung it carefully in her closet, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every word, every touch that had meant nothing and everything simultaneously. Monday morning arrived with the weight of reality. Riley returned to work in her usual uniform, her hair pulled back, her hands ready for whatever mess needed cleaning. The hotel looked different now, familiar but changed, like she'd learned a secret about it that couldn't be unlearned. She was restocking towels on the 14th floor when she saw him. Damon, walking down the corridor with his phone pressed to his ear, looking tired and distracted and human in a way that made her chest ache. He saw her, stopped mid-sentence, said something into the phone and hung up. Riley. Mr. Ashby. She kept her voice professional, kept working. Don't do that. He moved closer. Don't pretend Saturday didn't happen. Saturday was research. Professional development. That's all. Is that what you tell yourself? He was close enough now that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, could see something else too, something raw and uncertain. Because I haven't stopped thinking about you for 3 days. I'm fairly sure that's not normal professional development protocol. Riley set down the towels, met his eyes. What do you want from me? I don't know yet. I want the chance to figure it out. What about your girls? Damn. Don't look at that. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a keycard. I'm having dinner brought to the penthouse tonight. Nothing fancy, just food and conversation. Come at 8. Know that I'm asking not because you're a puzzle I want to solve, because you're the first person in years who makes me feel like maybe I could be more than what everyone expects. He set the keycard on her cart and walked away before she could refuse, before she could explain all the reasons this was impossible. She stared at the keycard for a long moment, then slipped it into her pocket and finished her shift on autopilot. Joan found her during lunch break. He invited me to dinner, Joan blushed. I sensed that. How did you know? Because I saw how he looked at you Saturday. How you looked at him, even though you're trying really hard to pretend you didn't. Joan leaned forward. Riley, I know you're scared. What if this time, the thing you're scared of is actually the thing you need? Riley thought about the orphanage, about learning that wanting led to disappointment. Thought about Damon's hand on her back, his voice saying he wanted to be real. Thought about the business she'd been dreaming about for 2 years without ever making it real because making it real meant risking failure. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Nobody does. Joan squeezed her hand. That's what makes it worth doing. I'm rooting for you, go girl. That evening, Riley stood outside the penthouse suite at 7:58, the keycard heavy in her hand, her heart loud in her chest. She thought about walking away, about choosing safety over risk, about all the ways this could go wrong. Then she thought about all the ways it might go right. She slid the keycard through the reader and opened the door, stepping into the unknown with nothing but hope and terror to guide her, unsure whether she was making the best decision of her life or the biggest mistake, knowing only that standing still had stopped being an option the moment he'd asked her name and looked at her like she mattered. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Whatever happened next, she'd chosen it herself. If being seen for the first time feels like salvation, how do you tell the difference between love and leverage?